Hey guys, welcome to challenge 29 today. We do have three sentences, relatively short, so I thought we'd take them on. And they are fairly simple. They all start with the subject, except for the last one, and the only one that starts with um, an adverb here. Okay, so let's get started. Going back to the drawing board, as we always do, and looking at dividing out our sentences into sections, looking at the punctuation, there's one. There's another one right there. And then there's another one here. Okay. So, uh, again, I haven't read through most of these sentences. I'm going to bet that the middle one, which is a little bit longer, is made up of two clauses, one probably dependent, another one independent. But we'll see. Okay, all we know is that out of this three sentence structure, we get um, three different separations. And now we can get started looking for subject and predicate. So, right there at the beginning, we got bus. Okay, and we have a predicate passes. Then we have I, the next one. And we have a predicate, have. Okay, now we could say I have something, but if you look right next to it, there's the adverb never. Okay, so I have never owned. Right away, you are looking at the main verb, which is been. Okay, so this is made up. This predicate is made up of two things that are sandwiching this adverb never. Okay. Now, how do I know this? Simply because once I look next past this first predicate and I see an adverb followed by a main verb, we have something called an auxiliary here, auxiliary verb, and the main verb. That's all one thing. Now, we got though. Here is an adverb. Okay, so chances are we're dealing with a clause here. And if so, then this has to be a subject, and it is. And look at this, another adverb never, okay, following the subject. And we have stop. Okay. Now, I'm not going to do running, although you're probably tempted to say, yeah, that's a verb, Mr. G. Technically, it isn't, but we will get to this in a minute. Then we got our conjunction and there is a subject there. Whenever you see a subject starting with there, you're dealing with an impersonal construction, right? There are things. Impersonal simply means that you are not expressing any person, place, or thing. You're simply pointing to a distance or pointing to something. So there's our subject, and R is our predicate. And then we have the last sentence, which starts with an adverb only, subject, dauntless, and predicate, ride. Okay. So just looking at subject and predicate, we managed to find one, two, three, four, five ideas that are being expressed in three sentences. Now, let's look at the first one. The bus passes. Now, passing is a verb of motion, typically. And it's not going to take a direct object, though sometimes it may. It's one of those irregular verbs. But in this case, if I look over to the next one, I see a preposition under. Okay, and again, remember, guys, how do I know that this is a preposition? Simply by reading it by itself and then stopping when you get the question under what, you found your preposition. So tracks, okay? We have an adjective elevated, but be careful. I mean, you're right, it is an adjective, but it has a verb field, doesn't it? Because of the ed at the end of it. That's because this is called a perfect passive participle. And again, I'm going to write that down in case you guys want to take notes on this. So elevated equals perfect passive participle. What is a participle? A participle is a verb turned into a noun. Okay, in this case, it's a pretty much an adjective. But if we were to really break this down, here's how it would look. Okay, so it's not just elevated tracks, but tracks having been elevated. Okay, so yes, it's a little bit a little bit complicated, but just know that you can take a verb and turn it into a noun. You can do it in a passive way. Why is it passive? What makes it passive? It makes it passive because the verb is acting on the noun it modifies. Okay, so in this case, you are absolutely correct to say it's an adjective, but it is a perfect passive participle because it has an ed ending at the end. Okay. Next, I have never been. Okay, been, verb of joining together. It's in a. So to have been somewhere doesn't really take a direct object here because it has a preposition on. On what? A train. And then we have a break, though they never stop. And here's where we get into that. Is this a verb? Is this a noun? What is this? Okay, so this is a participle. So here we had a perfect passive participle, and right here is where we have the present participle. And this is acting as a noun. Remember that participles can act as nouns, they can act as adjectives, they can also act as what they're pretty much intended to, verbs. But in this case, running is modifying they. Okay, they never stop doing what? Running. Okay, predicate nominative describing they. Okay, and this is impersonal. There are, and this is going to be a linking verb, which means that this here, tracks, is also a predicate nominative because it describes there. Okay, there are tracks, and everywhere is pretty much an adverb. And the last part, fairly simple, ride, right, what, them. Wow, so guys, we only have, out of 3 sentences, one direct object here, okay? All bunch of verbs that are dependent on prepositions, okay? And predicate nominatives or linking verbs before we actually get to a verb that takes a direct object. Okay. So again, if you're still confused about participles, don't worry. As we keep going through this, we'll see many more examples of what participles are and what they do. Just remember, anything ending in ing, okay, is a present participle, which means it's usually going to be acting as a noun, and it's going to be modifying a subject. Okay. You could say, I saw the man running to the store. See, I is the subject. Saw is my main verb. Direct object is the man, but the running is modifying the man. And this is how the present participle works. A perfect passive participle always ends in ed, like you see in elevated, and it modifies a noun that's next to it. In this case, tracks having been elevated. Okay. Or you could also say destroyed tracks, right? And destroyed would also be a perfect passive participle, tracks having been destroyed. All right, let's look at our verbs, tenses. Bus passes. We have a third person, singular, one bus. Present, it's definitely simple and indicative. Awesome. I have never been. Okay, this is where we get into finally a different past tense. It took us about 3 pages to get to this particular tense. So it's first person, definitely singular, and it's perfect. How do I know it's perfect? Because of this, have, okay? I have been, okay? It really, why would the author use have never been instead of I was never on a train? Because just now, right, the narrator has passed under the tracks, and just now, the narrator of the story is thinking about a train. This is where it's so important to know your verb tenses, because you have that image of a person sitting on a bus, seeing tracks, and in that moment using the perfect and saying, I have never been. Okay. Can you say in that context, I was never on a train? Probably not. Why? Because you lose that image of things happening simultaneously or happening just now. If the bus passed under the elevated tracks, and then somebody asked me, oh, what are you thinking about? Then you could say, oh, I'm thinking about that I was never on a train. That makes sense. Okay, so this is why the author decided to use a perfect here instead of an imperfect. And yes, it is simple and it is true. Okay, next, they never stop. Okay, we take this as a past, or it has a past feel, doesn't it? Because of never, but it isn't. If you just read they stop, you get the actual tense. So third person plural, and it's present simple indicative. Ah, awesome. The impersonal verb construction, there are, still applies. The same thing. There is just a simple third person. Okay, it is singular because it's one there, and present simple indicative. Followed by the last one, the dauntless. Now, the dauntless looks very singular, doesn't it, guys? But what gives us a clue that this is actually a plural, it's because of the ending here on the main verb. It's actually not, it's not rides, it's ride, okay? Implying that this is a plural. So third person plural, present simple indicative. Okay, and one last thing, guys, and you see how nicely this perfect fits into the story, because everything's happening in the present. Everything is happening right now, except for a thought that comes across the narrator's mind while going under the elevated tracks. Okay, that prompts a memory to be recalled in the perfect tense. So I hope this was a great eye opener on why verb tenses matter and how you can use it in a narrative. Because, frankly, we probably would have just said I was never on a train. But in this case, I'm hoping that you know now why the author chose the perfect instead of the imperfect. And I'm so proud of you guys that you know that. Okay, not a lot of students know this. Not a lot of people know this. And I'm so happy that you had this opportunity and you're continuing to practice your diagramming, because it's only going to take you higher from here. Thank you so much. Please, please have an amazing weekend. Be great to your mothers. Okay, it's Mother's Day this Sunday, so I hope you're preparing something special. And I will see you on Monday. Take care, guys. Bye.